Hello, I'm going to be talking about COVID, PropTech, and the reinvention of the office. Mostly, I will be referencing the office market, but most of what I have to say is applicable across all asset types. Change is coming to all asset types. But before we get to the here and now, I'm just going to recap a bit about the state of the market as we ended last year, as we ended 2019. Well, some things were very much the same. Technology wasn't sleeping and Moore's law was cracking on as ever, which is how we got to these numbers. These are the number of processors on a CPU, a computer's central processing unit. So we had 100,000 in 1980, 10 million in 2000, and then just 16 years later, 10 billion. That's exponential growth for you. And what happens with exponential growth? When you get to big numbers, doubling them becomes a big deal. In fact, we have been more than doubling recently. This is the Cerebras GPU, or graphical processing unit, that was announced in late 2019. And this has 1.2 trillion transistors on it. But even that is not as impressive as this. This is the growth in the amount of computational power available to run AI systems. And this doubled every 3.5 months between 2012 and 2018. So a computer scientist had 300,000 times as much computing power to work with in 2018 than just 6 years earlier. I call this the Trinity of Transformation, where we are seeing huge increases in data and computing power and great advances in algorithm design, especially with deep learning. And this is having great consequences. There is a so what of speed. McKinsey wrote this in 2017. Overall, we estimate that 49% of the activities that people are paid to do in the global economy have the potential to be automated by adapting currently demonstrated technology. And that is now nearly 4 years ago. So we have been moving to an AI everywhere world. Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee, both of Harvard, wrote in the Business Review in 2017 that artificial intelligence, especially machine learning, is the most important general purpose technology of our era. Now, the importance of this is in those 3 words, general purpose technology. Most technologies are point solutions that solve one particular problem, but a general purpose technology is one that is pervasive. The internal combustion engine is a general purpose technology. Electricity is a general purpose technology. The internet itself is a general purpose technology. So we can expect to find AI embedded in applications throughout business and across society. And this means AI is set to have a huge impact on all of business and our wider societies. Up until 2015, most software code was written by humans, but increasingly code will be written by data. During the next decade, the most important software will be created by deep learning, enabling self-driving cars, accelerated drug discovery, and much more. The AI research company OpenAI has created GPT-3, which is the first AI that understands language. It can, for instance, translate legal tests such as a lease into plain English. It can also create web pages, translate languages, write software code in multiple languages, and converse with people nearly as well as real people can. It's going to be helping you run your buildings in the future. Deep learning is creating the next generation of computing platforms. Conversational computers, self-driving cars, and many consumer apps such as Snapchat and TikTok use it extensively. It can also create photos of people who don't exist. All of these were algorithmically created by a machine learning system. We mostly do not realize that until very recently, tech was a very small industry. 20 years ago, there were about 500 million computer users globally. Today, there are nearly 5 billion. Tech is now a systemic part of all our lives. Now, the reason for this diversion is to emphasize that our customers, the people we are selling or leasing real estate to, are changing very rapidly. Their businesses are changing profoundly. How they work and the work they do is changing dramatically. What they want out of real estate will not be the same tomorrow as it is today. Within real estate, it's all change, all change. Because the nature of work is changing. Anything structured, repeatable, or predictable will be automated. That is the 49% of all tasks referenced by McKinsey, which means we need to be thinking, what is it that us humans will be doing? Fortunately for us, there is something missing from structured, repeatable, predictable. And that is creation. We may not be Michelangelo, but for something to be structured, repeatable, predictable, it needs to be created in the first place. Unfortunately for us, machines are not very good at creation. In fact, Picasso had it right. Computers are useless. They can only give you answers. And that is the point of humans. We are here to ask the right questions. So if you think of it like this, anything structured, repeatable, predictable will be automated. So think of that as old work. But new work is what humans are good at: design, imagination, inspiration, creation, empathy, intuition, innovation, abstract and critical thinking, collaboration, social intelligence, judgment. An office that is designed around old work is, or shortly will be, obsolete. The future-proof office has to be designed for new work. Offices must catalyze human skills, which is why the real estate business is no longer about real estate. The value of real estate rests in to what degree it can catalyze human skills. Because ultimately, no business wants an office. They want a productive workforce. And technology has, paradoxically, made this ever more important. It has changed the purpose of the office as not somewhere to do technological things, but as somewhere to be the best humans we can be. Our value, or at least the value of most of us, rests on our human, not our technological skills. Which means Winston Churchill's comment of 1942 has never been as important as it is now. We shape our buildings, and afterwards our buildings shape us. So that was where we had got to BC, before coronavirus. Now let's look at what happened AC, after coronavirus. Now coronavirus has really hijacked the stage. Last year's play in real estate was going to be climate change and sustainability, but it turned out to be COVID-19 all the way down. Or so it seems, as the world came to a halt, the streets emptied, and we all remained largely at home. In reality, though, our response to coronavirus will, indeed has to, place sustainability at the core of the flywheel of change that represents the greatest opportunity the real estate industry has seen in decades. To deal with one, we have no choice but to deal with the other. Without hyperbole, we really do have a moral obligation to not waste a serious crisis. We now have the chance to do things that were not possible before. We have to seize it. The global pandemic is acting like a forcing function in real estate, as across wider society. The future is being compressed, time is being fast forwarded, and 5 to 10 years change will now take place in the next 12 to 18 months. Has a moment ever felt so Darwinian? It is not the strongest species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. The world has messed up big time, and this time it's serious. So what would have been? Well, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, who have over $6 trillion of assets under management, set the tone for the year in January last year. His annual letter to shareholders was entitled A Fundamental Reshaping of Finance, and has the subheading, Climate Change is driving a profound reassessment of risk, and we anticipate a significant reallocation of capital. Investors are increasingly reckoning with these questions and recognizing that climate risk is investment risk. Last year, he wrote, a company cannot achieve long-term profits without embracing purpose and considering the needs of a broad range of stakeholders. Ultimately, purpose is the engine of long-term profitability. Now, this received a great deal of attention and much tub thumping, but frankly, climate risk is investment risk is 100 times more powerful. When the man at the helm of a powerhouse like BlackRock says our investment conviction is that sustainability and climate integrated portfolios can provide better risk-adjusted returns to investors, the writing is on the wall. Demographics is also about to impact on this subject. Demography is destiny. Millennials aren't so young anymore, up to nearly 40, and they are moving into corporate positions of power. Now, whilst most millennials are XYZ comments are trite nonsense, it is true, according to a large Deloitte study, that as a group, the under 40s do put more weight on improving society than generating profit, most likely because they have to live with the consequences. Either way, again, as pointed out by Larry Fink, the world is currently undergoing the largest transfer of wealth in history. $24 trillion from baby boomers to millennials. As wealth shifts and investing preferences change, environmental, social, and governance issues will be increasingly material to corporate valuations. All of which indisputably means that an industry responsible for 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions and that consumes 40% of all the world's energy has not only no choice but to take this very seriously, but is going to be under the most intense scrutiny over the next 10 years. There will be some carrots used, but if the industry does not comprehensively up its game, then very many very large sticks will also be used. Indeed, these are already being used, with New York City mandating that large buildings should reduce emissions by 40% by 2030. So the scene was very much set for sustainability to be a key talking point, at least within real estate. When the money is worried about preserving wealth, you can be certain the rest of the industry has no choice but to take note. But taking note does not necessarily mean action. The real estate industry, especially during the good times, is highly skilled at taking note rather than action. So what will be? In evolutionary biology, there's a theory called punctuated equilibrium. This holds that instead of slowly evolving over time, when evolutionary changes occur, they happen rapidly and suddenly. Species split into two distinct species, rather than one species gradually transforming into another. In an equally transformational way, this is where we are in the world of work and the office. The way things were in February last year must now be considered history. Everything has changed. However long it takes to get through the current pandemic, we are not going to return to the world as it was. And hard though it may be to believe right now, that is a good thing. We have an opportunity to do things we thought were not possible. Because two zeitgeist changing things have occurred. First, we have been forced to realize that being inside, in confined spaces with many other people, potentially exposes each and every one of us to illness or worse. Our buildings can harm us. Secondly, across the globe, we have been part of the largest behavioral experiment in history. In a matter of days, the knowledge economy went from being 95% office-based to being 95% home-based. And the results of this experiment? Well, with caveats, working from home works. In this example of how being inside can harm us, 9 people in a restaurant caught the coronavirus thanks to the placement of an air conditioning unit. In this well-publicized example from China, we saw how spending hours together in an unventilated space led to dozens of employees catching COVID-19. The workplace actually acted as a petri dish. Now, we have known about the impact of environmental conditions for a very long time, but largely we have ignored the issue. Today, we no longer can. However, we are lucky in this because whilst we now need to take a close interest in the environment around us for health reasons, it just so happens that we will benefit from the productivity gains and financial returns that follow from working in optimized conditions. Put simply, humans' cognitive ability is maximized by being in spaces that are healthy. It's taken a pandemic to force us to do what we should have been doing anyway. This is a slide from a presentation given by the Shanghai-based but Canadian-led standards company Reset. As you can see, it is a known that cognitive function decreases above certain CO2 levels, and the same with increases in VOCs, volatile organic compounds. Increases in particulate matter 2.5 lead to increased risk of lung cancer and strokes. And there is much more in this vein. Without knowing the quality of the air in any office you go into, you are frankly endangering yourself. Pre-pandemic, that danger might just have been feeling a bit drowsy in a meeting. During a pandemic, it might mean rather more. Now, there have been many surveys done asking how people are getting on while working from home. but Leesman, who have been conducting workplace services for over 10 years, probably is the best. In their standard survey, they always ask people whether their workplace enables them to work productively. As you see here, nearly 20% more people say their home office enables them to be more productive than their office. Though obviously, this will vary by geography. What is very clear is that the better the office, the more people will want to return to it. If someone's home office is a nicer place to be than the company office, they will not want to go there. By the end of last year, the consensus of this survey was that the majority of people wanted to work away from the office 2 to 3 days a week, with just 15% wanting to work at the office 4 or 5 days a week. Who wants what is driven by a few core factors. The longer the commute, the higher the desire for remote becomes. Good public transportation makes a big difference. Age matters. Younger employees are more desirous of buzzy offices, having access to senior colleagues, and for the after-hours social life. Those with children or older, less social types are more bothered about just getting stuff done. Job task and type is critical. How much of someone's job involves collaborative or individually focused work? In each case, they need a space that best enables the work they do. Character also matters. To a large degree, offices are for extroverts. In many instances, offices work far less well for introverts than extroverts. And overall, people work best when they are given what Daniel Pink described as purpose, autonomy, mastery. Having flexibility to work in many different locations goes a long way to providing this. For companies, distributed work also has many advantages. The last 9 months has shown most companies that most of what they do can be done away from the office, and made clear what would be best done in an office. So cutting the total amount of space they occupy by 10 to 30% would seem to be relatively easy to do. Now, savings from smaller HQs could be simply banked, but that would not be wise. Reassigning the savings to better space or local space for employees and stipends for home office costs would be better. Rethinking real estate needs from end to end would be best. Planning around hub, home, and roam, where employees can make best use of whatever space they need, wherever they are, would be the optimum. Less but better, less but better. Corporates working with distributed teams also have the potential to benefit from far larger talent pools. There is a huge difference in the availability of talent that only needs to be in HQ 1 or 2 days a week, as opposed to 5. And as we have seen, a well thought out workplace strategy will lead to happier, healthier, more productive employees, as well as providing the flexibility to scale up or down as needs be. So what are your options? Well, you could de-densify, taking more space for each person in an office, but I'm pretty certain that is not what you will be doing. You could keep the same space you have now and accept very low space utilization. You could move to smaller space, but spread out usage over the 5 days. You could time share an office with someone else where you only occupy on certain days of the week. You could move to a private office with a flex operator that allowed you to spill over into shared spaces as required. Or you could work up a hub, home, roam strategy, where you keep a smaller but most likely much better central HQ, which employees visit sparingly, whilst also working from home or near home or wherever, by taking out membership with one or more network flex operator. The key takeaway is focusing on less but better, more flexible space. So how do you make this upheaval work in your favor? Well, first off, the most essential technology you must employ is to survey your employees. You need to ask everyone how things worked for them before the pandemic started. What was their commute? What percentage of their time did they spend in the office? And what did they do when they were there? Meetings, desk work, presentations, what? Then you need to find out how working from home has been for them. What has worked well? What has not? What do they need? How do they score the overall experience? Finally, you need to ask them what they would want to do after the pandemic. How many days would they want to be in an office or home or elsewhere? What type of spaces and equipment would they need? From all this data, you can then work out what space you really require, what equipment, what equipment, what equipment you need to procure, physical and digital, and also what corporate policies you need to implement around schedules, meetings, and documentation. All of this will be an iterative process. So generally speaking, take your time, collect data, and take care in analyzing it. A distributed company is a different animal to an office-centric company. Almost certainly better for everyone involved if you get it right. Because this time is different. Everything really is changing. What people want in the future, no, scrap that. What people demand in the future will not be what they wanted in the past. Hence the great PropTech flywheel. Our built environment needs to be safe and healthy for people to work, rest, and play in. But to make it such, we need to embrace a broad, deep, and pervasive notion of sustainability. The imperative and the opportunity for PropTech in this situation is therefore immense. We are all aware that throughout the built environment, from design to finance, construction, operation, onto sale or lease, the use of technology to remove friction and to enable discovery is mostly suboptimal. We do not do much in real estate very efficiently or very effectively. We waste energy, we generate horrendous amounts of carbon, we don't collect much data, and that we do collect is often not put to much use. The critical point, though, is that we know how to do almost everything better. We could dramatically improve the performance of this industry. We have the tools, the capabilities, and the technologies we need to do so. To date, the issue has been incentives. As a whole, the industry has not had the incentives to bother to put to use all the tools in our toolbox. 10 years into a real estate bull market is no time for innovation. It's just not needed. It's not even a criticism. Business people have been optimizing their businesses very successfully for the world as it has been. Today, all of this is out of the window. Our commercial assets are largely empty. In many instances, this might be the case for a while. But worse than that, our customers are not going to return until we can prove to them that they are safe and healthy places to be. They are now acutely aware of the dangers of the environmental conditions around them, of the importance of good hygiene and cleanliness, of the very air they breathe. Now, landlords in historic market downturns always pull out the same playbook. Reduce overheads, cut capex, minimize expenditure, hunker down, survive. But that won't work this time. This time is different. The lack of demand is not a cyclical market issue. It is an existential health and safety one. Plus, as we have seen, the chain link in work and the office is gone. You will not be able to cut your costs to get through this. This time, the only way through the crisis will be by spending money on upgrades to ventilation systems, on new materials, on new hardware, on new fittings and furnishings, on new cleaning regimes, on new cleaning processes, on communication, on data, on analytics, on interactions with customers, on increased staffing, on new business models and new ideas about what constitutes the office and even work itself. In a sentence, everything that we know we should have done over the last 10 years, but have not had to, we need to do now. That better built environment we have so often talked about, well, now is the time to build it. So we must design digitally end to end, construct using modern methods of construction, operate buildings with a zero tolerance to waste, plow investment into replacements for high carbon steel and concrete, connect our assets to the cloud and one another, and use the resultant data to create and curate better spaces and places. Demonstrate to our customers that our buildings will look after you and the planet. We have an opportunity within the PropTech community to push hard for the adoption of new and developing technologies. For computation and generative design, digital twins, virtual and augmented reality, smart materials such as solar glass and graphene, drone use, micromobility, and autonomous vehicles. With all of these, we are looking at, if not an open door, then one that is at least ajar. The opportunity is there. We need to be rethinking what it means to be a real estate company. What are the components that will enable us to be more than the providers of dumb boxes? At the moment, within the office sector, it takes 6 different skills to create a great workplace. But at the moment, they might as well be 6 different industries for all that they talk together and collaborate. But the real estate company of the future will be a mashup of all these capabilities. The future real estate company will have all the real estate skills the best have today, but they will also be highly skilled in Internet of Things and networks and data analytics. And then on top of all of this, they will possess workplace, HR, and hospitality skills. And they will use all of these skills to create and then curate great user experiences for their customers. And they will be built on real-time data. The future real estate company will have a granular and deep understanding of how their buildings perform. They will constantly monitor and optimize the environmental conditions within their buildings. They will understand exactly how people are using their buildings. What is the occupancy, utilization, footfall in each area? And what are their customers' jobs to be done? What are their wants, needs, and desires? How well does the form factor of the office match these? And the industry will start to think of the workplace as software. As anyone involved in tech knows, build, measure, learn is how products and services develop. You build something, you get it into the hands of a customer, you measure how well it works, and then you learn from that in order to start the process again. Build, measure, learn. Build, measure, learn. Historically in real estate, we have stopped at build. This will change. Frankly, we have no choice in this now. The pandemic has shown that work and the office are not joined at the hip. People no longer need offices. We have to make them want them. For the PropTech industry, this really is the silver lining to a very dark cloud. PropTech companies need to focus on their value propositions, which ideally will be around increasing or enabling greater sustainability, health and well-being, directly or indirectly. They need to demonstrate deep understanding of how their hardware, software, or services can fit into the operational flow of their customers' businesses. And they need to work as partners, not just vendors, wherever possible. Co-creation will be at the heart of the modern real estate company. What is happening globally today has never been experienced before. We will get through it, probably in a relatively short time. But pandemics will return, and climate change offers up the probability that other stop-the-world events are more likely. Unless we orientate ourselves towards a deep focus on creating a sustainable, safe, and healthy planet, we will be in real danger. Real estate has to sit at the heart of this. So let's not fail to grab an extraordinary opportunity. There is no solution to the problems of the real estate industry that does not involve tech. And because of the coronavirus, none of these problems can be ignored anymore. It has unleashed a great flywheel. PropTech's time has come. It's now over to you. Thank you.